It's the Political Free Agents podcast, and we're back for our Wednesday episode. We don't have the fellas with us tonight. I'm barely here tonight. It's a rough week. There's a lot of work going on, and so I'm gonna do my best and not to pontificate very long here. But there are some things to talk about that I wanted to address, and I actually just had a real good friend just hit me up and asked me some questions that I thought, hey, these are like perfect things to answer on air, in regards to the election and how to sift through the muck. And so that's what this one is about the emails that the Trump campaign is trying to push as this really big scandal, and oh my God, his emails. So we're going to address that. And then we're going to look at just some of the sites and some of the tools I use to be able to kind of keep up with what's going on. It's not easy. It's very time consuming to keep up with anything. Doesn't matter what it is. If you're I'm in the tech industry, for me to keep up with the tech industry, it takes a lot of time, right? Like I have to, keep tabs on what the latest stuff is going on and all the announcements and stuff like that are relevant to me. So it's time consuming. So in your job, I'm sure it's the same thing, right? So we're gonna cover some of those things. I wish Mike was here because all I got to say is, Goat James. Goat James did it again. Goat James got him one of them Wendy's, the 4 for 4. He got him 4 for 4, 4 championships, 4 MVPs. And so, of course, what happens, the haters couldn't wait for him to lose because they wanted to add something on to discredit him a little more. And then the LeBron stands couldn't wait for him to win so they could say he's obviously the greatest of all time, right? But anyway, I won't have any debate with myself about that topic right now because I love talking about it with Chris and Mike. They crack me up. But largely, no one's ever going to answer that right. Like it's a generational thing. You ask folks from the 70s, they're going to tell you something different. 80s going to tell you a little something different, right? It's just all about your era. So anyway, congratulations to the Los Angeles Lakers and AD. AD went out there and did his thing, and finally Jimmy Buckets is getting him some the props that he deserves. He's been, I guess you could say, trashed in the media from like 2-3 years back, maybe 4 now, where they were trashing Jimmy Butler, and he's now come out and kind of showed that. I'm that dude, right? Like, so shout out to Tomball, Texas, right up here in North Houston. So shout out to him for being able to get up there and show people that he earned his name, Jimmy Buckets. So anyway, on to all this stuff. Like what's going on? What emails are they talking about? And I couldn't believe it when I saw it. I woke up and I saw this. I'm actually going to pull up the article. I'm not going to show it on the video here, but I'll pull it up so we can talk about a few pieces of it. So I woke up and I saw but his emails, and I'm like, who in the Trump administration now has messed up on their emails, right? So short backstory, if you weren't paying attention in 2016, is that Hillary Clinton and all of her emails were a big problem, right? Like they wanted to get access to her emails. And then they ended up leaking the emails, mostly Podesta emails, which was like campaign manager or whatever for her. And so big issue, big deal, deleted emails, all that sort of thing, right? They so incensed about her deleting 30,000 emails, but they didn't care that a few years back before Obama took over, the Bush administration deleted over 100,000 emails in relation to the Iraq war. Right. But, hey, let's go off about 30, right? So, is what it is. People have short memories, right? I guess, I don't know. But anyway, that seemed to have like moved on, right? The whole email scandal kind of moved on eventually. A few weeks back, Pompeo says he has Hillary's emails about Benghazi, and he's gonna, you know, he's trying to get everything wrapped up so they can drop it before the election. I mean, how would her campaign survive? I don't know, right? Like, but she's not running, so who cares about Hillary's emails at this point? You do what you're going to do with Hillary. It doesn't matter. It has no bearing on the election, in my opinion. Then I see this, but his emails, and I'm like, the Trump administration messed up again, right? So Trump at one point was using a Gmail account, which, by the way, is why they were mad at Hillary, right? Like state secrets on a private server, right? Like that was a problem for Hillary, but Trump was using Gmail. Ivanka was using a private email, and I think it was Eric or Trump Jr. One, I can't recall which one it was. They had a private email, or you know what? It might have been Kushner. Had a private email, and they were conducting business through that email, right? I said it at the time. People thought I was trying to stand for Hillary, but this is like politicians used to do this stuff, right? Obama, during the Obama administration, I think 2013, the emails became an issue. Once the initial stuff about Hillary came out, and they put in a law that basically stated you're not able to do what all of them were doing, right? People on Congress were excoriating Hillary, who also had private email servers, right? Like it wasn't something new, right? So Trump administration gets in, they're using public email services like Gmail, which people get onto because of the whole Google, you know, thing. Um, and then I see this, right? So that's slight backstory. I guess it's not slight, went a little longer than I expected. So that's the backstory to but her emails, but his emails sort of thing. So I'm thinking it was the Trump administration who was actually uh, doing something here. But it wasn't. It was actually Hunter Biden who was uh, the problem here. And I'm like, well, that's no big deal. Like, why would, okay, y'all got Hunter's emails. Like, what's the issue? And I started thinking, oh, well, maybe there's something, because initially I laughed it off. I said, you know what? Maybe there's something in it that's a big deal, right? Like maybe he exposed something about maybe Ukraine or something. And so the New York Post, um, this is the headline. I'm not going to show it because, I mean, the article's trash. You can look it up though, feel free. It says the smoking gun email reveals how Hunter Biden introduced Ukrainian businessman to VP dad, right? Not going to dig back into the whole Ukrainian thing, but let's do the short timeline of what happened. Burisma is the company. There's an oil company in the Ukraine, one of the oil companies in the Ukraine. Their prosecutor, America and multiple other countries wanted him out, right? Joe Biden infamously stated, you either fire him or you don't get your whatever, $16 billion, whatever it was, whatever the number, I can't recall. But it was a large sum of money that we were planning on, you know, as a partnership, giving them. Biden said, you fire him or you don't get the money. You have 24 hours, you decide, or 2 hours or something. And so they ended up firing the prosecutor. The scandal part of this comes in that Hunter Biden, who's Joe Biden's son, ended up working for Burisma. And he was working as legal counsel. And now you can debate whether or not he actually earned his position, but he was a lawyer. He was on the board there for legal counsel, which will be relevant here in a moment. But people are saying he's unqualified. He's never worked in the energy sector, so he didn't deserve the job, and he was being paid $50,000 a month. So that's the scandal in a nutshell. That people say Joe Biden actually did that to get his son paid, and basically is using his influence as a vice president to get his son rich, essentially. Basically what the Trump campaign's been doing the whole time, or Trump admin. So to the emails. This is an email from Vadim Pozarski. Probably butchered that, but that's basically the name, to Hunter Biden. It says, "Dear Hunter, thank you for inviting me to DC and giving me an opportunity to meet your father and spend time with him, or spend some time together. It's really an honor and pleasure. As we spoke yesterday evening, would be great to meet today for a quick coffee. What do you think? I could come to you," but there's misspellings, right? Language barrier. But he was trying to say, "I could come to your office somewhere around noon or so before or on my way to the airport. Best V." So that's the smoking gun that Hunter introduced him to his dad. If you're sitting there confused, right, right, it's a nothing burger. He introduced him to his dad, right? If this is a smoking gun, how many people have come to the Trump properties specifically to meet Donald Trump, right? Like, how many people have paid for, like, put money in the Trump's pockets at his places just to be able to meet them? Remember, once he got elected, they doubled the rent down in Mar-a-Lago. They turned it into, a secure facility that the president could go to. People started paying for access to the president. People have been staying at the Trump hotels for access to the president. Like, there's been all these things that have happened, but this is a smoking gun. Yeah. So there's things to be, like, leery of and pay attention to, right? And I'm not saying there's nothing at all here, but to say that this is some sort of smoking gun is just a farce, right? And so they're I'll read the paragraph. This is their justification for their header. It says, "The blockbuster correspondence, which flies in the face of Joe Biden's claim that he's never spoken," this is a quote, Joe Biden said, "I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings." And so they basically say this correspondence is contained in a massive trove of data recovered from a laptop computer, right? So Biden said, "I've never spoken to my son about his dealings." There was a picture of Biden with, it may have been Vadim Pozarski here. I'm not sure, but they were on a golf course. Maybe this is the same person. Maybe this is the same meeting. I don't know. And so people are saying, well, how could you not have talked about it? How could you not have that? So they think this is a smoking gun that proves, one, I guess, that Biden is a liar. And then two, that he actually did talk to his son about his international business dealings. I mean, okay. Let's say it's true. Okay. I mean, I'm not sure what necessarily to be incensed about right here and to go crazy over. There's plenty to criticize Joe Biden over. Talking to his son about his work. Yeah, you can say there's conflicts of interest with Hunter working for a country or for a company in a country that Joe Biden is the front man for. And you don't hear a lot about who else was working there. You just hear about Joe because he's a threat. And that's the only reason we even have this in the news, was because he was a threat to Trump, right? So how did this happen? How did they even get this email? Well, that's where it gets quite fun. And well, I guess fun for us political nerds. So there's an article that's up, and this one is from the Daily Beast. And so this one basically is about the same topic, but how did the laptop how did they get access to this laptop? And remember in the statement, well, actually, I didn't read it. Sorry. They said the computer was dropped off at a repair shop in Biden's home state of Delaware in April 2019, according to the store's owner. Now, April 2019, if you go through the timeline here, remember, it's only 2020. We went through an impeachment, and the whole conversation about Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, and Ukraine all kind of came about last summer, right? So it kind of fits into this timeline a little bit, and it's a little bit convenient timing. But basically, the computer repair shop guy was supposed to fix Hunter Biden's computer, ended up sifting through his computer, found some videos of Hunter Biden apparently smoking. Well, this is what the article said. I'll just read what they say. Other material, this is, sorry, clarity, this is back on the New York Post article. This is not the Daily Beast yet. So it says other material extracted from the computer includes a raunchy 12-minute video that appears to show Hunter, who's admitted struggling with addiction problems, smoking crack while engaged in a sex act with an unidentified woman, as well as numerous other sexually explicit images. Again, like politically, who cares, right? Like, is that, if Joe Biden's son is a, crack smoking sexual fiend, does that mean you don't vote for Biden? Like, what does that actually mean? Or let's even clarify, does that make you choose to vote Trump? And what's the purpose of this? Like, they're trying to hit Biden by hitting his son, and they're so focused on Hunter that to me it reeks of desperation, right? Like, you don't have anything better than this. Like, there's plenty of stuff you can hit Joe Biden with, but this is what you have, right? And so they show the emails in the New York Post article and that sort of thing. But I'd be shocked if there wasn't some form of, retribution that Hunter could have for somebody actually, like, this is. So as a techie, I don't take my computers anywhere, right? Because I'll fix them or deal with it. But I wouldn't take them anyway, because I already know once somebody gets into that computer, they're in there, right? So never take your computer to, I don't care where you're going, because it doesn't matter the company. It's a person that's going to be unlocking your device or doing whatever you want them to do, right? It's a person, right? So that person, you don't know what they're going to do. You don't know what they're going to look through, what they're going to get access to. If you're saving your passwords, they could access anything they wanted to access if they wanted to. So it just seems a little flippant to me for somebody that's in the public eye in this way to actually make that choice. But hey, people do dumb stuff all the time. So maybe he did. So the article on the Daily Beast, this is the title: Man who reportedly gave Hunter's laptop to Rudy speaks out in bizarre interview. His name is John Paul Mac Isaac. Is it really 4 names? I guess so. I guess that's John Paul Mac Isaac. Maybe one of them is a nickname. But he had this, they call it a bizarre interview because he had these conflicting stories. And so basically the conflicts in the stories basically make you question, like, what? Like, is this legit? And so I'm not going to read the whole article, but part of it here, it says, throughout the interview, Mac Isaac switched back and forth from saying he reached out to law enforcement after viewing the files on the laptop to say that it was actually the Federal Bureau of Investigation that reached out to him. At one point, Mac Isaac claimed that he was emailing somebody from the FBI about the laptop. At another point, he claimed a special agent from the Baltimore office had contacted him after he alerted the FBI to the device's existence. At another point, he said the FBI reached out to him for help accessing his drive. The FBI reached out to a local computer repair shop for help accessing the drive. Right. Okay. We're gonna roll with you on that one, Mac. That sounds plausible to me. Okay. So you would think that if the FBI took control of the device, that they would ask for the relevant details, like password, if there is one, or hey, remove the password so we can access it, sort of thing. Secondly, after the laptop comes in, if it's a video of him smoking crack and having sex, why go to the FBI? Like, why exactly do you go to the FBI over that? Is that relevant? Okay. Um, and he made a copy of the hard drive, and then he gave it to Robert Costello, who is Rudy Giuliani's lawyer, which is where you start getting all of Rudy starting to run all these avenues for Trump and Ukraine and all of that, right? Like all of that, this timeline is all merged together in that sense. So there's an hour-long interview. I didn't listen to it because I don't really care about spending 52 minutes and 26 seconds listening to a guy talk about a hard drive. And so this guy seems to be a supporter of Trump. He said that the impeachment was a sham, or actually, and his social media posts show that he's an avid Trump supporter, voted for him in 2016. Nothing wrong with that. But it kind of leans that way. And so another part that kind of stood out was he said that he didn't know if it was actually Hunter because of some medical condition. And then he said he thought it was Hunter because it had a Beau Biden Foundation sticker on it. Okay. So he didn't know if it was Hunter that dropped it off, but he thinks so because it had a sticker on there for Beau Biden. And then he said he dropped off 3 laptops at that day. And so one of the 3 laptops, I guess he found it on, or maybe there's stuff on all 3. All right, so here's the part that you kind of start seeing floating around social media. So he said he made a copy of the hard drive for purposes of personal protection. He said, this is a quote, "They probably knew I had a copy because I was pretty vocal about not wanting to get murdered," he said. "So I'm going to have a copy." This is a reference to Seth Rich, who people say Hillary Clinton had killed after he went forward and spoke out against them, right? So another one of those conspiracies against the Killer Clintons, I guess, whatever you want to call them. So this is the last part I'll read from this, and we're going to move on. Mac Isaac refused to answer questions about whether he had been in contact with Rudy Giuliani before the laptop drop-off or at any other time before the New York Post publication. Pressed on his relationship with Rudy Giuliani, he replied, "When you're afraid and you don't know anything about the depth of the waters that you're in, you want to find a lifeguard." Seeming he realized he said too much, he added, "I'll spit." The other word, though. So he realized, like, I said a little too much. And then so they asked, "So Rudy was your lifeguard?" The reporter asked, and he said, "No comment," he replied. So this thing just went from bombshell, his emails to show that, Joe Biden used his influence to enrich his son, to some guy that was supposed to be repairing Hunter Biden's computer, quote unquote, colluding with Rudy Giuliani to stick something to Hunter Biden. And again, it boils down to him saying that in an email that some guy met Joe Biden, his vice president. So how do you sift through all of this stuff, right? This is what I mentioned earlier in terms of I had a friend who called, and he was like, "Hey man, like," he'd asked me a few years back about building an app, which is common when you know how to build apps. People hit you up and they're like, "Hey, I got this great idea. Can you build an app?" And so the app idea not giving it away necessarily, but it's already out there. So was to have a way to figure out who was what in the election, like who stands by what, who's done what, what's their promises, what have they completed, that sort of thing. And so I just shared some links to, uh, with him of some of the sites that I use. And so I wanted to share some of those as well here. But the thing about beyond like going through these sites, when there's breaking news like this with Hunter Biden's emails, how do you sift through understanding these emails? And we had an episode before. We went through a bunch of news sites and things like that, and just different things that we do to actually determine, or at least try to get a better idea of what's happening, or try to spot the BS before we get entrenched on a side. So I won't retread all of that, but I will call out a few things that are generally helpful when looking through this thing. One of the things that I do is ignore headlines. Headlines oftentimes are not even written by the person who wrote the article. Headlines are controlled by the editor, and they'll pick the headline that's going to get the most clicks. And that's what you get when they say clickbait, right? So if you ever been fishing, you are the fish that they just threw a fake piece of plastic out there and you bit it, right? So you took the bait on this lure and you decided, I'm angry or I'm happy or whatever emotion they wanted you to have out of that article. You took the bait, essentially. So number one, ignore the headlines. They're not going to give you much. Number two, in today's day and age, they're not going to put a lot of the information at the top. And the reason they don't is because people don't read. And so a lot of times you need to read down the article, like literally read novel concept. Read the article before making a decision. The reason being is sometimes when you get to the end of an article, like at the very bottom, they'll set you up with all sorts of information and details and all this other stuff. They'll put all these things in line and they'll pile on all this information. And then sometimes at the end, they kind of say, something to the effect of, the opposite of what the article has been setting up, right? And I've seen it where an article lays out all these possibilities and then at the end basically says, quote unquote, like, we have no proof of this, we're looking for something like that. And it's like, well, all you had me do was read an entire piece about possibilities, but you've painted them like this is something that's going on, and that's what gets people going around saying, odd things like that. So check that, like read through, and digest kind of what they're saying. Pay attention to phrases, that kind of equivocate or throw out like red meat sentences, something that just kind of says, that we're just positing that this is, it's possible, right? They're just positing over an idea and just kind of talking about something that could be a problem, right? They're trying to make some connections that may or may not be there, and they're lining everything up, right? Like I could come on here and I could throw a whole bunch of information out that makes you think there's something really huge and nefarious that's going on, and just really go down like the Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson kind of lines and really push you. And don't get me wrong, it's not just Fox News, just for clarity. They're just two of the worst for me. But you can toss in Don Lemon in there as well, and many others. Chris Matthews, who I think is actually off of MSNBC, he was one of the worst as well. I could really go down there, but that doesn't make any of us better, right? And I can't lie like that anyway. So, So check that out, and just try to find the context, right? It's like a math problem. You know, back in school, you got these word problems, and it's, you know, Jimmy has 2 apples. Jimmy also has 50 cents and 3 bananas. If he gives 1 apple away, how many bananas does he have? Right? That the apples really are nothing. 50 cents means nothing. You just want to know the number of bananas, right? How many bananas? The banana number didn't change because he didn't give any away or anything like that, right? It's a bunch of extra information that have nothing to do. It has nothing to do with the actual story. It's just a bunch of things they're just kind of surrounding it with to try to make it. That's called forming a narrative. Um, and so I would check those things out. And lastly, whenever you go to an article, always try to find the original article. Remember the game telephone? You know, you take you take a cup or something, put a string on it, you know, a can, and then you talk to it, you put it up to your ear, you listen to somebody else on the other side talking. And then you do that, and it goes from one person to another person. You're trying to tell this story all the way through. And by the time it gets to the 8th person, the whole story is different, right? It went from Jimmy went to the swimming pool. By the time it gets to the 8th person, Jimmy was dating somebody else's mama, and they went to the swimming pool in the club after. Like, it's a whole different storyline at that point. And that's what happens with these articles, right? CNN comes out with something, and then next thing you know, MSNBC picks it up because it's breaking news, and they put their spin on it. And then Fox News picks it up, and they put their spin. And Daily Beast and New York Post, everybody takes the article and they put their spin. Zero Hedge, they take theirs, right? So there's all these angles that you're maneuvering around because people are putting spin and forming other narratives on top of the source. So look in there at the usually around the top. Sometimes they put it at the bottom, but they'll say that it's sourced from, in a way like CNN reports that blah, blah, blah. Stop right there. Don't read that site. You know, I mean, you can clarity, read what you want, but go to the source article. You get it from the source, no matter who that source is. Digest the source, and then come back to the one that is, you know, being presented to you, and just really avoid opinion pieces for the most part. I don't pay attention to opinion pieces. People come out and say the Washington Post said blah, and then you open it and it's an opinion piece from somebody inside the Trump admin, or the Trump campaign, or the Biden campaign, or whoever. And it's like, well, no, it's just somebody with an opinion. I could have wrote that, right? It's not rooted in fact. It's just a bunch of pontificating, just so I can use that word for the 3rd or 4th time this show. So, all right. So along these lines, back to my friend. He was asking, like, how do you keep up with this sort of stuff, right? How do you, for somebody that, as he said, somebody working class, and what he was taking a jab at me because I don't have to leave. Like, this is my office right here that I'm sitting in. I don't have to leave the office. I do the podcast right here. Wake up, come sit down right here. My truck rarely leaves the front yard because I work from home. I have now for 20 years or 17 years. So it's just what I do, right? So he's, you know, saying the working class people who have to get up and actually go somewhere, right? And there is a difference, huge difference in that. So, you know, he's messing with me, but he's right. There's a huge difference. How do people like that actually keep up with what's going on? Especially if you have a drive, 20, 30 minutes or whatever. How are you going to sit down and read an article, right? You're losing, you know, 40 or so minutes in your day, to 40 to 60 minutes in your day just traveling. So one, obviously, is listen to the political free agents, right? If this is your first time here, go back 10 episodes. Listen to those 10 episodes. It's your number one source. I mean, I'm not saying it, you know, that's what I'm hearing a whole bunch of people say. Let me put my Trump spin on this. I'm hearing it from a lot of people. A lot of people are saying this is the best podcast on the internet. I mean, I'm not going to argue with a bunch of people. That's what these people are saying. I mean, let's just go with that, right? I'm trying to be humble, but that's what the people are saying, right? Uh, secondly, uh, find really good podcasts to listen to, right? There are some really good podcasts out there. I guess I can go through some of the ones I listen to, but one I know is like Planet Money. I like it's not very long podcasts, it's not very long shows, um, but it does give you a pretty good, kind of synopsis of different topics and things that are going on. So I do like that one. Um, One that kind of you may like called The Dollop. I don't listen to it a lot, but interesting stories. I also have 538, which is one of my favorite podcasts because they talk about polling, right? So if you're one of those people that say the polls always get it wrong, you should listen to 538. 538, they pretty much got it right in 2016. They're very open about the mechanisms of how their polling works, and they discuss all the hot topics as they come up. So I actually absolutely love 538. I'm listening now to one called The Balance is New. Dr. Jason Nichols and I can't remember the gentleman's name, Siraj Hashmi. Uh, that one's actually pretty good. I kind of like it. Jason is a Democrat. I don't know what Siraj is, um, but Siraj, he seems like he's a little bit, you know, nonpartisan. Most likely he's a political free agent. Let's just say that. At least that's how it seems, because I have seen him correct what you would consider like a quote unquote leftist narrative from Jason. So I do like that one. And there's several others that I listen to that aren't necessarily related to podcasts, but some of those that I mentioned, they're really good podcasts from the perspective of being able to catch different things from different perspectives, right? And also the Jason Stapleton podcast. Well, it's not Jason Stapleton. It's Wealth, Power, and Influence Now. He talks about way more than just politics, but he utilizes current events to discuss how to navigate them and how to um, overcome them by, kind of like being the best version of yourself. So, right. So the podcast is easy. Plug it in, listen to it on your drive, especially if you're driving, for a distance each day. Those are good. Um, in terms of tracking, if you're looking on your computer, you're trying to find out what's going on in all sorts of elections, because everybody's paying attention to the presidential election, but you got mayors. Your mayor may be up this year. Tennessee, the mayor in Tennessee just died of COVID. So now they have to have a special election, right? So how do you get information on the special election? Like there's all these layers that, my friend was actually looking for a way to parse through that stuff. And so one site that I found in last year, a really good site is called Ballotpedia. So BALLOTPEDIA.org. This is a great site for getting information about 2020 candidates, conventions, different information on delegates, battleground states. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, it has the links, and it mentions these are the 2020 elections that you can follow through here. The president, Congress, Congress special elections, executives, legislators, judges, ballot measures, or state ballot measures, local ballot measures, municipal officials, mayors, school boards, recalls. Right, so you can get all sorts of information about what's on the ballot in your area, right? So you don't have to just focus on specifically what's going on in, the national politics space and not be able to find the stuff locally, right? Because the attack ads are rolling right now. Like they are firing off left and right. So you don't know, like when you watch those attack ads, if you don't know the person or you don't know their platform. And so like here locally, we have Sri Kulkarni, who was actually one of the first guests on Political Free Agents. He's running for Congress again. And if you didn't know Sri, if you didn't know anything about his platform, you would just assume he was a raging leftist. But you wouldn't know that he actually, so he is a Democrat, but he operates on the spectrum of trying to work across the aisle. And he also operates on the spectrum of trying to bridge that gap, where he used to have these kind of quote unquote lunch and learn type sessions, right? And those sessions actually were a way for him to discuss things with other Republicans, right? So it was him and a Republican friend in Washington that, they would go out and they would have these sessions, and it was just a hodgepodge of people, right? Politically speaking. And so, like, if you didn't know that and you watch the attack ads that are running right now in the Houston area, you would think he was a raging leftist that wanted to replace all of the state healthcare and put in a single payer and all this sort, like, you would just follow the ads, right? And of course, don't get me wrong, Sri is running his own ads too that are attacking Troy Nails and all these other people, right? So these things are happening on both sides. It's not a single side issue. But if you pay attention only to attack ads, you wouldn't know what to think. You would think there's two devils running right now, to be honest. And so Ballotpedia gives you the chance to dig into, who's running for Congress, who's running in your area, what's happening, who's coming up, how many seats are up for reelection, which seats are up for reelection, like is McConnell up, is Pelosi up, like you can find out all of that stuff along with historical information. I mean, it's a treasure trove of information that you can get. And they also have a daily email. So you can go subscribe to an email and you can just get it in your inbox every day, any updates or any information that's come out that will be relevant to you. So that's a great site to go to just sift through and just find some data, right? Deal with the data, don't deal with the narratives, because the narratives are always going to be, iffy. The other one is Open Secrets. We talked about it before. Open Secrets is the Center for Responsive Politics, as their site says. And this is where my go-to for anything relating to finances, who's making what, or like who's getting what from what donors. Is it small donors? Is it big donors? If you listen to Trump, it's all the Hollywood elites that are, funding the Biden campaign. Well, you don't have to listen to that, right? You can actually go look. All that information is open to the public. You can see how much is coming from the political PACs, right? I guess that's repetitive, but the PACs is a political action committee. And that's a way to skirt around campaign finance donations and that sort of thing. So you can see who's getting money from the PACs, who's getting money directly to their campaign. You can see all of that, the small donors, big donors, what sectors, what industries, those things are all there. And of course, you can see how much like the overall number is, which we covered a few episodes back or several episodes back now. But we're up to $11 billion. And I'm gonna try not to get on my soapbox right now about how much money is spent on these elections compared to the amount of, the amount of issues that we have here in America that people say we can't afford, right? So, and by the way, for clarity, since I mentioned about the small donor thing, Joe Jorgensen is over 60, about 70% all small donors. Donald Trump is maybe about 50, it looks like. And Joe Biden is about 35, maybe right at 40% in terms of small donors. Here are the numbers: 72 for Joe Jorgensen, Donald Trump 52, Joe Biden 38. So that's the split of small donors that have contributed to their campaigns. So now you have the data, right? So you hear the narrative, you can go get the data and you can validate it. Is that right? Is that real? Then you can make a conscious decision on whether or not it's a relevant, thing for your vote or not. Right. Last one that actually my friend told me about is called And Campaign, like AND campaign.org. Don't know nothing about it. I'm not going to even, go beyond trying to promote it because I don't know what it's about. I haven't dug into it, but he had somebody show it to him. Looks like they have some potentially interesting things on their site. A podcast mentioned called Church Politics podcast. So it may be geared towards Christian based on some of the imagery on the site. So we'll see. We'll see. I'll dig into that a little bit more. All right. Last topic, and we're gonna get up out of here. Coming up on time anyway. So Ice Cube is apparently a Trumper. Let me put that in quotes for those watching on YouTube. Ice Cube is a Trumper. Now, this is one of those things that for me, I sent this to Chris earlier because I was like, what? Like, am I missing something here? Like, what is actually going on that has Ice Cube trending? And I just checked back on Twitter and he was still trending. Yeah, still trending. And also the CWBA is trending as well. The CWBA, all right, so slight backstory. CWBA was a contract that Cube put together called a contract with Black America. The reason he did it, pardon me, the reason he did it was because he said the Black community is not getting enough and we're tired of being just a political pawn that you try to prey on our votes, right? So as we continue to go through, let me get some of this water. All right. I sound like Trump today. Trump sounded like his mic was distorted today when he was talking. And that's why I get for laughing earlier, because now my throat's messing with me. So he said basically back a month or so ago, he was on like the speaker circuit sort of thing, and he's talking about this CWBA. And he's basically saying, hey, we need to get racial economic justice, right? We have everything that's going on. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, all of these things. We have the protests. Now it's time, let's just get some action, right? We've been loud, we voiced our opinion, we've said our piece. Now let's have some action, right? So he created this CWBA, the contract with Black America. It had a bunch of people who were saying, nah, don't really like it. There's some issues with it. Yeah, fine, fair game, right? A couple people helped him out with it. God, can't remember who it was, but he had two prominent people who hit him up and were like, hey man, like let's tweak some of these things, and not prominent in terms of like Hollywood sort of thing, but like prominent in a space that it makes sense. Like they know these things. I just can't remember who it was. They weren't politicians, so either. And they kind of refined it, they tweaked it, they worked on it, and they came up with something that they presented. Well, come to find out, 3 weeks ago, I believe, he basically started working with the Trump campaign. This is why he started trending. And when I tried to figure out what exactly was the issue, I went and watched a video. There's this almost 8-minute video where Cube's talking. And so it all came out from, the Trump advisor saying that Ice Cube helped the Trump campaign with the platinum package, which we hadn't even talked about on the show. And so people are dragging Ice Cube because, he's had tweets where he said, I will never endorse an MFer like Donald Trump, ever, right? So people are like, you a sellout, right? And then, of course, his music, right? Songs like No Vaseline, F the police, like they calling him a clown. And, folks are, folks are really, they really coming after him, right? And so his role was not that he was a Trump supporter. His role was actually, you know what? Let me actually read Cube's words. He said, now, mind you, go out to he's at Ice Cube on Twitter. Go out to his page. He has the video. Go watch it and see what he said. Listen to the words yourself before you follow the hashtag. He said in this follow-up tweet after the Trump campaign put out that he was working with them on the platinum package. Cube said, facts. I put out the CWBA. Both parties contacted me. Democrats said, we'll address the CWBA after the election. Trump campaign made some adjustments to their plan after talking to us about the CWBA. Right. So basically, Cube puts out a contract, says, this is what the Black community needs, largely around like reinvestment, in the community, schools, like a lot of the stuff you would expect. You read it, you may agree with some, you may disagree, but he put it out. Both campaigns hit him up, said, hey, here's our plan. Democrats said, we'll hit you up after the election. Trump said, let's work on something right now, the Trump campaign. Don't know about Trump specifically, but at least the Trump campaign. And so Cube said, cool. Went and worked with him. Trump campaign comes out with the platinum package. Need way more time to dig into the platinum package than what we have left on this show. People are killing them over it. So somebody responded, a guy named Danny Mosho, responded and said, my hip hop hero, Ice Cube, is working with the dark side. I haven't felt this low since Kobe passed. All caps. Heartbreaking. Cube, I'm not sure you understand how much we value your voice. And when we see you jumping the shark, quote unquote, it kills us, especially in 2020, frowning face. Cube responds with, every side is the dark side for us in America. They're all the same until something changes for us. They all lie, they all cheat, but we can't afford not to negotiate with whoever is in power, or our condition in this country will never change. Our justice is bipartisan. This is being politically free, right? You may completely disagree, and you may completely think that the fascists and whoever else, you can't agree with them, so you should not negotiate with them. The fact is, they're in power. Maybe in power for another 4 years, or we may get somebody new for 4 years. The oppression, fascism, frame it however you want, it's not going anywhere, right? So whoever wins, you got to deal with them for 4 years. Otherwise, you say, I ain't working with you. Nope. I'll wait 4 years. Time is your most precious resource. Do you want to spend 4 years waiting, or do you want some solutions now? I'll take now. I heard Killer Mike Render on The Breakfast Club, and he was talking about the new online bank, Greenwood Bank. Bankgreenwood.com is the website. Go check it out. It's intended to be for Black and Latinx, the Black and Latinx community. It's Black owned. We can actually dig into that a lot more at another time, but it opens up in January. And so I've been looking into it. I love online banks. I use simple.com. I think it's phenomenal. I have no need for any other sort of bank at this point, but I do keep multiple bank accounts, right? But my primary is an online bank, so I highly promote them. And of course, I'm going to check out the Greenwood, Bank Greenwood, which is a throwback to Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street. So anyway, bring it around. Mike Render, Killer Mike, he went through this because people saw that the Georgia governor, who people say stole the election by basically overseeing the conflict. He was running for governor. And there were some issues with that's putting it lightly, with the election. And he oversaw the entire thing, ended up winning. It's controversial, big issues, right? So when they see Michael Render talking to him at one of his barbershops, now mind you, Killer Mike is his rap name, that's his career. But he does a ton of stuff in the community. You see him all the time. He talks about folks. If you don't know, I'm talking about big guy, big black guy, clean edge up, beard, always clean. Um, he's also a businessman. So he's moved on from just being a rapper and a singer dancer sort of dude to being a businessman owning barbershops and these sort of things, right? And now he's working on this banking aspect with Bank Greenwood or Greenwood Bank. And so when people saw him talking to the governor at one of his barbershops, lit him up on social media, completely lit him up. I can't believe you talking to him. He stole the election. He suppressed the vote, blah, 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 blah. Mike said this on the Breakfast Club. He said it at the time too, but he said it on the Breakfast Club this week or last week. And he said, look, man, this guy's going to be here for 4 years. Either we demand some change and we communicate with them and we work to change some things now, or we sit back waiting, hoping that they're out of office after the next 4. Make a choice, right? So I'm not going to excoriate anybody. I didn't have a problem with Jim Brown meeting with Trump. I didn't have a problem with Steve Harvey, any of them, because you're not going to make any change by just ignoring having the conversation. And I'll make it real simple and plain for you. LBJ did not want to pass the Voters' Right Act. He didn't, right? He just didn't. They brought this up as well on the Breakfast Club. He used to actually call it the N-word bill. I mean, this is who it was, right? He didn't want to pass it, right? So if we just had all the riots that were going on back in '65 and those sort of things, and trying to get rid of segregation and all that, it's just all riots. There was no conversation. We would not have had the Voters' Right Act because we didn't have a president in office that wanted to pass it. He didn't. He did not want to pass it. He didn't want it. MLK kept banging on the door. That's what it was. The voices were loud in the streets and in his face. You have to have those conversations. There's no way around it, right? There are a bunch of other avenues. There's activists in the streets that are doing amazing work, that are pushing it, but you also have to have those conversations, and you have to be able to push and get what you need for your communities from whoever's in office. Doesn't matter who. If you keep dealing with these sides and you left, right, you're just going to be hating people and cutting off family and friends because you disagree politically. When ultimately, you're all fighting the same battle. That's all it is. We are the political free agents, even though sometimes it's difficult for us all to get on the show. We do our best to try to make it. Trying to make the transition to Tuesdays, but it's the coordination is a little tough, but we're working on it. But we appreciate all our listeners. Shout out to McKinfolk Nunta. Had to put his nickname out there. For listening to the show. Saw early this week he had us queued up on his podcast player. So I love seeing that. I appreciate the feedback that comes in and all the ways that it comes in. But stay out there, stay politically free, and make sure you're holding these politicians' feet to the fire. There's no way around it. You got to make them fight for you. If you don't make them fight for you, who else is going to fight for you? Make them live up to what they're saying they're going to do. I don't care who it is. Make them do it. Catch us on politicalfreeagents.com. You can find our YouTube, social media links. Everything is up there. If you want to go straight to social media, at PFA Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Make sure you go to YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button. That way you're notified every time that we go live. We'll catch you this Sunday, 2 p.m., barring nothing life